Do you have many interests and need regular interaction in the external world? And do you communicate more easily by talking? Do you learn best by doing and interacting? And are you social and easy to get to know? If you can relate to these behaviours, then you might just be an extrovert. Are you energised by being alone? Are you more quiet and reflective? Are you reserved and take time to get to know? And do you focus on a few things in depth? If you can relate to any of these behaviours, you might possibly be an introvert. We can all use both preferences, but one is usually our most preferred. And of course, it takes more than 4 questions to work this out, and you can find more information about extroverts and introverts in earlier podcasts. Today I'm talking about extroverts. We're going to be looking at how an extrovert can actually engage without fear in conversations with other people without needing any prior knowledge about them at all. I'm an extrovert and this is me. I can talk to total strangers without any concern of repercussion. Of course, I am selective about what kind of stranger I am approaching. I was at the supermarket one day when my son Jack was about 3, and when I'd finished paying at the checkout, I asked him if he'd like to sit down and have an ice cream. And his response astounded me. He said, "Yes, please, but only if you're not going to talk to anyone else." I stopped and did a quick recount of my conversations during our supermarket shop, and I realised that I'd spoken to at least 5 different people on our way around the aisles. I'd chatted to a lady at the fruit and veg department about the poor quality of the vegetables. I met a friend on aisle 3. I helped an old lady get something off a shelf that was too high for her. I'd chatted to another person as I held the door of the fridge open for her. And then I had a conversation with the checkout assistant. For him as an introverted child, this was all too much, and he just wanted my time and my attention. In order to do so, he realised he had to put a hold on my conversations with other people by requesting some time for himself. And it wasn't until this quiet reminder that I realised how much I spoke to other people and strangers. My daughter often says, "Mum, you don't have to have a conversation with someone you don't know." But I love it. This is how I get to know people and interact with them, and sometimes those strangers become friends. If you're listening right now and this sounds really odd and there's no way you'd ever do that, I totally understand. But if you're listening right now and this is you and your family and friends are possibly saying the same things about you, embrace it and enjoy the conversation. But please do acknowledge when that stranger actually doesn't want to talk to you. I'm Kate Mason and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones that you care about the most. Today I'm talking to Dr. Victoria E. Waller. With 4 decades of experience, she's a renowned reading specialist and an advocate for students and a guiding force for children facing challenges such as reading difficulties, classroom behaviour issues and a sense of exclusion. Her book, Yes Your Child Can, serves as a valuable resource for parents, educators and therapists, presenting proven techniques to foster success in children with learning differences and to uncover their unique strengths. In addition to her work in education, Dr. Waller is a creative mind behind My Disney Busy Bags for travel on planes and cars for Disney and Hyperion Books, and she has designed backpacks and toys for M&M Mars Incorporated. As a founding member of the LA Children's Museum and a seasoned speaker for the International Reading Association, her impact extends across various fields. Notably, she's recognised as the rockstar tutor for Kourtney Kardashian's children. Now, Vicki is a fellow extrovert. Connecting people to help her students with learning differences is one of her passions. She creates conversations, both verbal and written, in her quest to find out more information that could help her students to learn to read and write. Many of the people that Vicki meets through these interactions become lifelong friends. Vicki and I are here today to talk about the benefits of starting up conversations, asking strangers for help, and putting yourself out there in the world. Please join us as we extroverts enjoy a fast conversation which goes off on many tangents about Vicki's extraordinary life. Hello Vicki, welcome back to the show. I am so glad to have you here.
I know, I feel like you're my friend and we should go out for some lunch or something.
I feel like we should too. If only the flight distance felt a little shorter from here to LA, it'd be totally on. And the air flights are a little bit expensive these days. Now, listen, on our previous podcast together, we talked about your amazing book, Yes, My Child Can, Your Child Can, Creating Success for Children with Learning Differences. But today, I really want to talk about you, the person that you are and what you've done with your life, because you are such a passionate person that gets stuff done. I would just love to know, how did your life kind of start off? What have you done? Where have you been? What's all your learnings? It'll take longer than 25 minutes, but let's try and squish it in. You start.
I saw your questions, and it's very interesting. I was thinking, somebody asked me a very interesting question. A young woman, she said, why did you start working with kids with differences? Now, don't forget this, and I'm loving this new thing, science of reading. Let me tell you a secret. Mm-hmm. All these programs that they're saying, isn't this wonderful? I did that program 50 years ago. They've just renamed them and sold them to different people. And what I say is, if you're going to teach reading, you do it all. It's not just one system. If you want to do sounds in isolation, pa, 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 fine. The children with issues are not going to learn that way, but fine, do that. But then do interests and passions, and let's write about what you want to write about and change up, use it all. And I'm so tired of reading these articles. I can't even tell you. But I started because the first class I had, there was a reading teacher in the school, and she took the kids from my class who weren't reading. And I love those kids because they were creative. I can't actually do creative things. Like I can't draw, I can't build, but I see what others can do. And I sort of give them the junk and say, okay, you love boats. Okay, make a boat. And they'll make a boat. And I'm like shocked because I would have never done it like that. And I love this teacher. I kept picking her brain. Tell me about the kids that can't read. They love coming to your little classroom. And then I moved with my husband, and you'll love this. There were no teaching jobs. Is that funny? All the teaching jobs were taken. Yeah. In the 70s, so I went and got a master's in reading, and I loved it. And then I taught kids and was a reading teacher. And then I went and got my doctorate because there was this great teacher from Harvard that was coming to Cincinnati, and I wanted to learn with him. And those were the kids I liked because they're interesting. They have passions and strengths. That's why I started teaching kids with differences. And they never had...
So were you a full-time...
Listen to me. Never had disabilities. They have differences. They're smarter than most of the teachers. I hate to tell you, but they are.
I know, they probably are. So with all of this behind you, did you go into straight teaching in a classroom, or did you start taking smaller groups, or did you tutor after school? So, how old would you have been when you'd done all of this, and had you had your own children at the time?
I didn't get married till 26, and we didn't have kids till our 30s. And I did that. And my mother kept saying, when my sisters had babies at 19 and 20, I didn't have kids till 33. I mean, I had things to do. No, I had classrooms, but I always liked the kids who couldn't read, or they had differences, because I thought they were so creative, and I was always creative and doing interesting things. And so that was in Michigan. Then in Michigan was interesting. The first class I got, one of the teachers patted me on the back, and she said, "This is the worst class in the school." I said, "The first year teacher, 40 kids in the classroom, 40 kids. No books. They didn't have books. I've never been.
Wow.
This was in your city of Detroit. No books. I love Motown. Okay, I'm a Motown girl. Well, I taught them how to read using music. I was blasting Motown music every day in the classroom, and the principal would walk by and slam the door. I didn't really care, and I would type the words out. We didn't have computers. Type out the words, and I taught them to read using Motown music. And then I said, let's find, we were doing the United States. Okay. I started begging 1967, begging. I'd go to toy stores, bookstores. I have kids that can't read, can't write, and they're in the inner city. There were no materials. They gave me everything. I'm still begging. I beg all the time. But this was, they learned about the United States. So I said, okay. I found out most of them were from the South. Okay. They were African American kids whose families came up. We wrote letters to all the relatives, and I plastered across the whole room the letters we got back from all the relatives. Many were in the cotton fields, but they were in every state you could imagine. And we found, okay, where is Mississippi? And that's how I taught them. And I thought, they were all in the summit. When I left, they said, you know what? They'll never have a teacher like you again, which it made me really sad. But that was my first thing. And then I moved to Washington, D.C., and I taught in a classroom. And that's where I met that reading teacher. But then I got married after several years. So I moved with Marshall to Cincinnati. He was making ice cream cones. That was fun. And I got a classroom. And then I decided I really have to see what this reading thing is about. And I applied to get a master's degree. And the funny thing is, so weird thinking back, because he had a good job and I kept getting graduate assistantships. I had everything I've done was paid for because they didn't have anybody going for a master's and a doctorate. And they were just the most fabulous teachers. And then I taught at a school, and I was in a hallway. Nowadays, you couldn't do that because there was a door leading outside. And they closed the door and made me a room, and that's really illegal fire stuff. And it was this teeny tiny room, and I taught kids from every classroom. I had 6 or 7 kids that came in, and I taught them reading, and I would beg and steal. I would go to reading conferences and beg and steal and get books. And that's where I got this Linda Bell, who has Linda Mood Bell. It's really auditory discrimination in depth. It's a blue box, and the New York Times had started it. And New York Times gave it to me free. In those days, they were giving teachers free stuff. And I tried doing Linda Mood Bell. It was the worst thing. And the kids are like, pa, 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 ka, ka. I couldn't even teach them with that. Now I'm the dumb one because Linda Bell bought it from Teaching Resources. And she has Linda Mood Bell things all over the world. So she's smarter than I am. But it's still, and who goes to it hates it. It's boring. You might learn to read, but you hate reading. And I'm just not about it. I'm about doing it all, doing phonics, doing sounding out, but using the kids' passions and strengths to do that. I'm writing about
and that's because, Vicki, you're passionate. You're passionate. You're not in this for the money. It's nice to have money along the way, but you know, that's always a good thing. But you're not in it for the money. You're in it for the love and the passion for those kids, and that is the driver for you is doing that. In that sense, you know, what happened when you had kids? Like, did you pull out of the workforce or?
No, I still worked, and I got a job. I said, listen, I can do stuff. I'll do it mornings. There was 2-3 months when my son was born, and he was the best baby, and he slept. And I would sit there waiting for him to wake up 3 hours. Then he woke up for lunch, and then he went back to sleep. He was a perfect baby, and I was going nuts. I really was. And what I ended up doing was this woman said, I have a tutoring clinic. You want to come tutor at 6 o'clock? And Marshall on that 2 days a week would come home at 6 o'clock and I would go tutor, and he took care of Andrew. And then it just went on from there. He was in preschool, then I could go work. And I got myself a morning job from 8 to 12 at schools. So it was perfect. If he was in nursery, I don't know. I just always... They were very rarely with sitters. Usually it was Marshall, or I was getting my doctorate. I was going to school on Saturdays and Sundays we had, or night times. And he would come home and take care of the kids. So that's
fabulous. So
now, he's a very present father, always, and a present grandfather now.
Yes. And an absolute rock as a personality type in that sense, you know, like, they're the rocks. They're the rocks you and I need in our lives, because the fallback and always there. So, you know, that's the brilliant thing. While you can go and do your thing, they're happy to be in the background, but not unloved, but just in the background there,
in the background,
which is cool.
Absolutely. I mean, he's always even with the hazmat kid. It's just like, and even when we were in Australia, were we in Australia?
Have you been over here?
We were in wherever we were. It was Australia, I think. And we're standing in the hotel, and there's a man with 2 kids. So of course I go up and say, "Where are you from? What do you do?" And they said they're from Mountain View, California. Well, ding, ding, ding. Mountain View, California is Google. I have a student who's obsessed with Google. The next thing you know, I'm chit-chatting with the kids. I'm buying pencils for them. And I took my student up and we spent a day at Google, which was probably one of the best days of my whole life. And we did that. So, I'm always talking to people or, trying to see.
So who else have you talked to over time? Because I know that you've been to the White House because we had a chat around that before, at the end of last show. How did you get to the White House? Apart from in the car?
I remember that somebody knew Barbara Bush in LA. I'm one of the people that started the Children's Museum here. And except for me, they were all very rich people. I mean, people head of Disney, people head of all the studios, a lot of that. And my kids were at a school that had a lot of those people and I met them, whatever. And now I'm trying to think what. I don't know how, I mean, I don't know. It's just, I always ask people. I'm always, if you're in something like, okay, Barbara Bush, I guess I asked, this couple had gone to the White House. I said, do you know Barbara Bush? And she says, well, I mean, I know her secretary, whatever. I said, I want to give Barbara Bush these busy bags I made Disney. I made these busy bags for kids to work on the plane and train. And they said, okay. And I talked to the person. I had to go there and I'm in the room and she wrote a book about Millie, her dog at the White House. It's a famous dog that Barbara Bush wrote. And so the dog, I wasn't concentrating. The dog comes into my room and I am on the floor dying that I'm with Millie and laughing to myself. And I see a foot. And it's Barbara Bush. She said, who did you come to see, me or the dog? I said, I hate to tell you. I came to see you, but I'm very excited about it. So I have pictures of me with the dog. It's so cute. But it's always asking people. Disney, Michael Eisner was president of Disney, and he started the Children's Museum, and I was one of the people. I just said, can my kids go on Splash Mountain? Yes. Can my kids go and meet the animators? Because I taught my kids how to do animation. I had a machine that cost $5,000 in 1985, and I got a grant. I have no idea from who. And I had the same machine that they use at Disney, the animators, and the kids met the animators, and then they animated claymation. I did claymation, where they make things, but the machine animates it. But I just think, I don't know. If it's for students, I've never been turned down. Never been turned down.
And you,
yes,
yeah.
I was turned down.
Who?
Neil Diamond. His kid was in my kid's class, and I asked him, could he come to my class just for an hour? Because some of them can write music. It would be so. And he said, I'm not doing that. And to this day, he's the only one that said no to me. Isn't that weird? The only.
That is.
Yeah. Everybody. I mean, we called the Ballard, the one who founded the Titanic, and he wrote a very thing to my student. He put, dream big and don't let anyone talk you out of your dreams. And this child wrote that and because his teacher was being mean to him. And the mother said, what can I do? And I said, well, if you go to the principal and talk about the teacher, she's going to get you in trouble and the teacher will take it out on him. If you go to the teacher, I was in the same school as her. She was the meanest person I've ever met to first graders. I said, she'll be mean to him. I said, so I called on that day. I said, what did you do on the day he's supposed to talk, be in this program? She said, I kept him home from school. She wouldn't let him do anything with the Titanic. And there's a second grade book on the Titanic. And so we wrote to Ballard. I found Ballard. Now we have the computer. You can find anybody.
Yeah.
In the old days,
you can
people by knowing other people. But now my student picked a book to read this week I've never heard of the author. It's a cute book, whatever. Well, I found him on the internet. I wrote to the person and he's so interesting. He's an artist, plus he writes children's book. He's in Japan, and he's going to connect with my student.
Oh, how brilliant. And the thing about asking, about asking all the questions that you ask too, that people are usually willing to give. And people, I always say to my kids, if you need something, people are really generous. It's when it's when people don't need anything. But if you ask, people are usually very generous, and they do want to help. They are happy to help. And the fact that you ask those questions, because so many people don't, you see, too many of us have a huge fear around asking questions. I do, in that sense of, when I sit there and I listen to what you're saying and doing, it really inspires me, because I think, well, all they can do is say no. And I mean, obviously Neil Diamond said no. So
Neil Diamond was the only one who said no in all these years. I mean, I don't say I'm going to the president, although I went to Barbara Bush, but still, I mean, even with Robert Ballard, you can email. It's funny because a very famous author, I won't say his name so people will call him. So I love him. Okay. And I went online, okay? And he didn't have his phone number or anything like that. But then it said he's married to so-and-so. So I looked up so-and-so. There was her phone number. So I called and I left a message. And he called me back. He said, how did you get my number? I said, well, I didn't get your number. Your wife's number is not in the thing. So I just found your wife, because she has a different last name, of course. And so meanwhile, he's been lovely with my kids. He'll send a book and he'll write notes to them in the book. And it's very exciting. The kids, it's really, the man who was caught in the whale's mouth 2 years ago in Cape Cod, that's such an I mean, I couldn't get over the story where he's a lobster fisherman. He still likes going all the way down, and he gets his crates. A lot of people just have the crates and bring them up, but he likes going down, been doing it for years. And he went down, and all of a sudden, he got into something's mouth. And I found this the most incredible thing. It was not, he knew that it wasn't a shark because they had baleen. If it was a shark, he would have been dead. But they had baleen. He also, his nose piece came off. He was aware that he'd better get it back, or his breathing apparatus, or he would die in the whale's mouth. And then the whale opened his mouth and spit him out because he couldn't swallow him. Okay. Interviewing him was about, first of all, he was drinking a little bit. Okay. My student had no.
I can understand that.
But it was such an incredible interview. I mean, he was swallowed, but not swallowed. He was injured, whatever. He
spat out.
But he was into the whale's mouth, and he didn't break anything or anything. I found that fascinating. So whatever the kids are interested in.
And the fact he still goes out, that's the other thing too. Imagine going back. I wouldn't be back in that water if I'd been in a whale's mouth. I'd be, forget about it. Yeah.
Because it would have been a shark. It really could have been. I mean, he watches out for sharks, but he was in a whale's mouth. And that he even thought, I lost my breathing apparatus. I thought that was interesting. How did he stay normal inside? He knew it was dark. And he knew it was baleen.
Yes. Yeah.
He knew it was not a shark. So I guess I don't know. He was out within seconds, I think. Because the whale couldn't swallow him, so I spit him out. But I try, whenever the kids, they're interested in, like the hazmat kid. Boy, I've never had a hazmat kid. It's funny. They're all interested. I think that's why I like teaching them so much. They're not the plain old smart kid who gets A's on papers. They have something that they're totally interested in that nobody else is interested in.
I agree.
And they're a little odd. I think they're a little odd. I mean, because the one that was interested in Matchbox cars, I mean, he was obsessed with them. Okay, it's not liking them. He was obsessed, and there was an article in the paper about the guy who was head of Matchbox cars at Mattel, and he had learning differences when he was a kid. That was an easy one for me. I just called Mattel for him like I knew who he was. And the funny thing about Mattel, though, when you go to Mattel to the Matchbox cars, the big building, there's no signs on it because they're afraid people will go in and steal in the nighttime. They'll break in and steal their Matchbox car ideas. I don't know. But when we walked in there, he spent 2 hours with us. I had no idea what either of them were talking about. They were talking about wheels, cars, and I was just like, just take me along. I have no idea what you're talking about. And this is it's another win. The teacher said, I can't stand it. He's so lazy. I said, he's brilliant. Have you ever talked to him or asked him to write about something he was interested in? I'll tell you, my book, the reason I think my book is a success, which it is because it's written normally for a regular parent to say, or teacher, does your kid do this? Okay, then stop saying they're going to snap out of it, because they're not. And I tell right in the first chapter, and every parent goes, oh, you're right. My mother said he'll snap out of it. Another one said, don't worry about it. Somebody came to me, and I knew that he needed some help. And I knew the mother, she went to a doctor who I really like. And I don't say anything about meds because I'm not a medical doctor, but I knew immediately, give this kid a few meds and he is going to be unbelievable. And I wrote to the doctor. I said, it's funny, she didn't write back or anything. And he said, for years, she's been putting off the medication. What? She has a kid who's messed up.
That's right. And that is the hard thing.
I mean, I've been on thyroid medication since I'm 29. I don't even know why and the doctor says, yeah, it's good that you're on it. But if you need to be on the medication, they're not going to become drug addicts. But if you don't get the help, when they're 15, they're going to be drug addicts because they need something to medicate, because everybody keeps saying, you're so smart, why can't you do anything? So my book is do this now. Okay, who are the people that test? One of the moms came to the doorbell's ringing, 2:00 in the afternoon. I go, I open the door, and she's hysterical. They say he needs a test because something's wrong with his brain. What's wrong? I said, there's nothing. He was 6 years old. He knew you could mention an animal. He could tell you about that animal. No matter what animal you asked him about. Parents had read to him ever since he was born, and he loved animals. And I thought, this is why I have to write this book. There's nothing wrong with him. There's something right with him.
And you do have to write that, because I didn't even know, reading your book, I didn't realize that process. I mean, I was a teacher 30 years ago for 15 years. And although children were quite different then, there was a lot of differences back then in a sense of the kiddies today that are out there. But the thing is that if I'd known all that even while my children were growing up, that would have been so beneficial. Because as I mentioned to you, I was lucky my son had auditory processing issues and vestibular issues that were discovered early, because one of my best friends, who's a teacher who makes an impact on people's lives like you do, who was his first teacher at school, picked those problems. Now, I was very fortunate, but your book is there to help people who haven't got the brilliant teachers that you and my girlfriend are, to pick those problems and put them on the right track. That is the total beauty of your book and the realism of it, because I also was sitting there thinking, why would you medicate children? They're all medicated these days. But I actually spoke to someone who had done that, and their child had said how much clearer they could think, because I started the conversation, because you don't usually start those conversations with people either, because they're scary conversations to have with people. And she said, oh my goodness, it was so great for her kid. So
there's so many. There's just Ritalin. And the doctors know which ones work. If you tell them, oh, this is happening, they go, oh, put it up a little, put it down. But they don't realize I think this one parent isn't going to listen to me. I mean, I didn't say to my medicine, I said, go to a doctor. But in my book, that's what it tells them. Go to a doctor. Who gets to teach your kid? Who should the tutor be? It doesn't have to be a Vicki Waller with a doctorate. It can be the great teacher who the kid loves and knows how to teach reading. That's all it has to be.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So one more thing, we'll have to wrap it up soon, but one more thing. So you're on TV the other week. How often have you been on TV before? And was it scary?
Okay, so I've done 60 podcasts, and I've gotten used to that. I have everything set up, my little words, what I'm going to say. Okay, so that's fine. And then I wanted to get on TV. And so I I called different places, whatever. And I got in the South, I've been on like 5 or 6, but I finally got on Giselle Fernandez here in LA. She's like, oh my gosh, if you ever could look online and look up Giselle Fernandez, she does the most amazing. She does interviews, usually hour ones, or she does little snippet ones. So I knew it was going to be 5 minutes, but I don't have my like little notes next to me to keep me focused. Okay. I didn't sleep the whole night, not even 1 minute. I could not sleep. I had to be there at 6 a.m. Okay. So I thought, I'm never going to be able to do this. But, she sits with papers in front of her. So she has little notes too, but it was only 5 minutes. So I was able, and she had the great questions, and it was 1, 2, 3. She's such a good interviewer. So now she has a program where she does an hour with people, and somehow they sent my name. It's different producers, but I just loved her. It was really, and it was fun. It was just such a, and I hope that I'm getting to more people so that people go, oh, wait, my kid is like that. What should I do?
Yeah. I watched it. You were great, because for us, it is really hard to contain. 5 minutes is like, what? That's a sneeze. Like, really? Seriously?
I never thought for only 5 minutes in my life. It was so funny.
So that would have been very, very that would have been very stressful. When they get you, hopefully they'll get you on for the hour, and you'll be able to, tell the whole story.
Well, except that I have to keep in order what I'm saying, and I tend to digress because I think of something else. So I have to be careful. But maybe I don't know if she always has notes.
Notes. I'm sure you could have notes.
Mm. Yeah, just to keep me. I was thinking of putting them on my hand. Or yeah.
And the other thing is, what you could do is, because I know that extroverts, we digress. We just go, whoop. There's a conversation over here, and there's a conversation over here. And when I run my workshops, I say to people that are introverts or whatever, I say, when the extrovert goes off topic, just grab them and just gently bring them back down to where you want them to be. So you could say to her, hey, listen, when I go off on a tangent, just grab me and bring me back down to the questions you've got in front of you, because it's a great story. It's always a great story, the tangent. I love it. It's really good. But it is that you've got to stay on track, like it's like me, we have a 25-minute podcast. I hate that. Right. But I know that I'll only listen to a 25-minute podcast. So that's why I have a 25-minute podcast. But so it's really important to use that. And the other thing I want to know is, you love travel. So tell me about travel as our last thing. Tell me about travel. What's your favorite country? What's the best thing you've ever done on your travel?
I can't tell you.
How many countries? Tell us how many countries first. 70. How many countries?
70, and 70. Mainly animals. So we've done, yes. In fact, the funniest one, I should show you a picture. You could sign up in South Africa to walk with lions and cheetahs. And Marshall, who's so quiet, we get there, and it's a huge facility, but the cheetahs and the lions are all just laying out on the ground, and a man takes us in. Nobody else is there, just us. And the man, he gives us each a long stick. I said, what's the stick for? He said, well, if one of the lions or something, you put, and I can see Marshall's not saying anything. He said, that was the dumbest thing we ever did. How could you have done that? But meanwhile, I didn't think about it till I got home, and I had showed everybody the pictures. They went, are you out of your mind? When I asked the man, he said, we fed them already. They only eat people when they're hungry. They weren't hungry. We fed them. But I'm with cheetahs and lions, and they're on top of me, and I'm taking pictures, and I had a pole. That was the most exciting. Later on, Marshall said that was the dumbest thing he ever let me do. But Antarctica, I must say, I loved Antarctica. And do you know, 30 years ago, it was 45 degrees. We had all kinds of stuff that you had to wear. It was hot. You see me with no gloves or anything. Some of them were like laying down. And I said, why were they laying down? And he said, because it's too warm and they're dying. That was 38 years ago. We already saw global warming because it was 45. We were dressed because they said, you're going in February, it will be 20, maybe 10 below. And it wasn't. It was so lovely. But can you imagine now? It must be really warm. But I like things with the, the Galapagos, blue-footed boobies and stuff like that. We always like something where I can see animals. I used to like to shop, but I don't care about shopping anymore. That was always fun to go to Paris or something. Go to the museums. I love the museums. But I think the animals were the best part. That was the most fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is great. And I mean, shopping, yeah, I go shopping because my daughter loves shopping, so I go along with her. But sadly, as you get older, shopping does lose its. And you are more interested in other things. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, Vicki, thank you so much for being on my show. I love having you as a guest.
And we lived in the same place.
We could. Look, next year maybe it's LA, and I'll be over and visit you, and we'll do something. That would be cool. Okay. That would be fun. We'll make a plan. And thank you so much for sharing your wonderful spirit and your curiosity and your love of kids. I really appreciate you being back on with me again.
Thank you so much for asking. It was great.
There's always a side of us that needs development. The extrovert needs to develop the skills of self-awareness to understand the differences in others and to use this to create conversations that consider listening and reflecting on other people's conversations, not just your own. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster? A Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.